Hey guys, you're back with Steph and Dennis, and today we're finally doing an updated version of our best high interest savings account video that we posted back in the beginning of 2020. We're going to be talking about why using a high interest savings account specifically is important, what to look for, and also reviewing some of the updated rates for the current time period here in 2021 and more. So if you're excited for this video and more videos like it to come, show us some love down below, hit that subscribe and like button for us, and let's jump right into the video.
Okay, so first things first, let's actually break down what a high interest savings account is. So when it comes to your money, traditionally you're gonna have two accounts, and all of this is before you start investing. So your checking account and your traditional savings account. Okay, so one thing to quickly note is that for a lot of people, including both me and Steph, when you're first starting out with your money, with your bank accounts and all of that, traditionally, a lot of people start off with having these two accounts at the same bank. So once again, your checking account is going to be where your money's coming in and where it's going out. So your paycheck's coming in, funding that account, and then if you have any expenses, your groceries, your rent, that sort of thing, that's where the money is leaving. Now, your savings account, on the other hand, is for the money you don't plan on touching, whether that be for, you're saving money for school, you put it in your savings account. If you need money for a trip, to buy a home, that sort of thing, you can put that money there. Now, the sad thing is that this is typically where a lot of people stop. The problem that we have with this, and you should have this problem as well, is that when it comes to, the big banks, so your TDs, your RBCs, Scotiabanks, whatever, the big five in Canada, when it comes to these banks, historically, they haven't really given you much back for you giving them the privilege and selecting them to be the place where you keep your money. Now, that's not to say that they're giving you absolutely nothing. Our problem is that when it comes to their savings accounts, they're giving you such a small return on your money, so the interest rates that they give you are so low. So if we were to choose any of these banks, at some point they've offered a rate as low as 0.05% for you keeping your money in one of their savings accounts. Now, if we translate that into actual dollars, for every $1,000 that you keep within their savings account, that earns you 50 cents. So if you're like me and you're looking at that 50 cents and you're thinking, why the hell would I even do that? I have two thoughts for you. Number one, it is better than zero. And number two, or I guess on the flip side, it's such a small percentage that they're paying you out that it doesn't even come close to outpacing inflation. So at a super high level, when we talk about inflation, just think in terms of prices. In general, when we talk about prices are gonna go up over time and they're potentially gonna go down. But when we talk about inflation, we're talking about prices rising. So let's say, for example, you walk into one of your favorite coffee shops. I don't know if you've noticed recently, but some of the prices have gone up, maybe by like $1, $1.50. But in general, prices have gone up because things have gotten more expensive. On average, inflation usually hovers around that 2% level. So if the bank is paying you 0.05%, you're literally losing your purchasing power, right? So you might think, why am I even going to do that?
Now, high interest savings account, on the other hand, are exactly what their name says, ones that actually offer a higher interest rate than that. So right now, typically at least around or more than 1% interest, and in pre-pandemic times as high as 3 to 3.5% interest. And now those rates have definitely been dropping right now due to the state of the economy and everything like that, but we do expect to see those rates rise back up over time. Something to note though is that, again, these high interest savings accounts, typically with these online banks, they still are offering rates of at least or around 1 to 1.25% interest, what we've seen, and we'll review some of those with you in a second, which is much higher than those traditional big banks. And now the difference between 0.05% and 1.25% still might sound super small to you, and it is actually, of course, very small in percentage terms. But if you think about it, let's actually break down what that would look like in dollar terms. So again, that is the difference between making 50 cents on every $1,000 that you have sitting in your savings account for a year versus making $12.50 for every $1,000 you have sitting there for a year. And that's a difference of $12 for no extra effort on your part. Your money's still just sitting in a savings account in the same way, but $12 extra on top of every $1,000 you have in there. And if you up the stakes a little bit and talk about actually having a fully funded emergency fund in your savings, so let's use $20,000 just for example's sake to keep it a clear, crisp number, that would be the difference of making $250 in interest if you had that $20,000 in a high interest savings account per year versus making only $10 per year on your money in a regular savings account, which probably sounds a bit better and a bit more of a dramatic difference.
Okay, so now let's talk about how you actually switch from your former bank to one of these online banks that pay a higher interest. First of all, the reason they can afford to pay a higher interest out to their customers is because they have less costs because they're operating online. So something you should probably think about is that when you're looking at the big banks and you're looking at all their retail offices and all those locations, those have a cost, whether it be the building, whether it be the overhead of the employees that actually work there. There's a lot of costs associated to that. So when we're talking about these online banks being able to use that money to incentivize their customers to actually come and bank with them, this is what we're talking about. So typically these banks still have human advisors that you can hit up on the phone. If you need to talk to customer service, you can still call them up. We're not talking about removing that. But if you do have any questions, you can always hit someone up and actually ask those questions to an actual person. Now, something that's important for you to remember is that not all online banks are made the same. What do I mean by this? Basically, what I'm talking about is that you might have a bank that sounds amazing, it's offering you all these great benefits, but from you not reading the fine print or looking at some of the other fees that they charge you on the back end, you might not catch that the fees outweigh the benefits right away, at least. So I'm not saying this to scare you by any means. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to give you our recommendations on all the different high interest savings accounts in a second, but it's always good to keep that in mind. So the last point that I really want to drive home and make sure that you guys understand is full on crystal clear is that online banks are safe. As long as your online bank is CDIC insured by the Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation, then you should be good to go. So we've actually partnered and worked with them on our channel in the past, but basically their symbol is a purple lock. That's how you can figure out who they are and whether your bank is insured by them. But let's say you wake up tomorrow morning, you turn on the news, you see that your online bank has gone down, it has failed. If your bank is covered and insured by CDIC, that means that your accounts are insured up to $100,000. Now, if we're talking about actually opening up an account, it's honestly really simple and much easier online. You literally just follow the steps. You have all of your information, your driver's license, whatever details they want for that specific bank. You need all of that and you just follow the instructions.
Okay, so now before we wrap up this video, we do want to go over, like I mentioned earlier, what a lot of the different banks are, specifically in Canada, because that's where we are, what their interest rates are sitting at right now. Now, if you're not in Canada, this is still somewhat interesting and useful to hear because I'm going to be really pointing out that the bigger banks have the lowest interest rates and approximately what those look like here in Canada compared to what some of these online banks rates are at right now. So I'm going to start with going over some of the worst high interest savings account rates at the moment, or just savings accounts rates. They're not particularly high interest. So the big 5 banks here in Canada, I'll run through them and we'll put them up on the screen for you too. TD Bank, their everyday savings account currently has 0.01% interest. Very, very minimal. RBC high interest savings account has 0.05%. Now they do have a promo right now where if you sign up for the first 3 months, you get 1.5%, but then it drops down to 0.05. And then all of the other big 5 banks are basically the same. CIBC, their eAdvantage account has 0.05. Scotiabank Momentum has 0.05 and BMO Savings also has 0.05% interest right now. So basically all of the big banks have about the same 0.01 to 0.05% interest at the moment. So now moving away from those big 5 banks that we have, there's a few in that kind of middle range of interest rates that are offered right now. So that includes Manulife, Tangerine, and Simply Financial. Simply Financial is actually where Dennis has in a bank account with as well. So those rates, Manulife has 0.15% interest right now, which is still pretty low. It's still a step up from the bigger banks, but a very low amount compared to what I'm going to share next. Tangerine, the same thing, 0.1%, so a little bit less than Manulife. They also do have a promotion though going on right now, which you'll see sometimes, where you can earn 2.1% interest on your savings account for 5 months, and then it goes down after that. And then Simply Financial has the exact same at 0.1% with no promotion. So I will say the difference between those really low at the big 5 banks interest rates and that middle group is not very much, 0.05 versus 0.1. Pretty small change, but then the best ones that I'm going to mention now actually have quite a big jump up from there. So some of the top ones that we found right now include Modus Bank, which is an online bank. It has 1% right now and a promo. If you open an account in the next few weeks, they'll give you 2.25% interest for 90 days, so about 3 months, and then it drops to 1%. Then you have B2B Bank. They're offering 1.15% interest no promos. Motive Financial has 1.25% interest. And then lastly, we have EQ Bank, which is also the bank that Dennis and I happen to have high interest savings account at, is matching the same as Motive with 1.25% interest. So something else to consider on top of just seeing which banks have the highest interest rate is also their rate sustainability. We're in a bit of unprecedented times here with the pandemic, so obviously everyone's rates taken a plunge, has continued to lower over time. Maybe we're going to start to see it climb back up. So that's a little bit unusual, but even pre and post, hopefully, pandemic times, what you can typically look up to is how long these banks have had their rates for. So let's say, for example, you're picking a bank with the highest interest rate, but they just made that offering last month. Maybe they're going to take it away in a few months. Might not be worth opening up an account there. It could be, it depends on how much effort you want to put into switching banks, but you do want to do some research into how long that rate has been sustained so that you know roughly how long into the future it'll stay at that same high rate as well. And this is one of the bigger reasons that we chose to bank with EQ Bank. Pre-pandemic, they actually had an interest rate of about 2.3% that they'd held for a very long period of time, so we hope to see it eventually rise back up to around that level as well. And if you are interested in opening up a high interest savings account with any of these banks, go for it. If you're interested specifically in the one that we use, EQ Bank, we will have a link in the description box down below for you if you're interested in signing up and opening up a high interest savings account.
All right, guys, so that's a wrap on this video. Once again, we hope that you found it useful. Hopefully we gave you some good information. And like we said, we do recommend that you use a high interest savings account as opposed to that traditional little to no value savings account that you have with your current bank potentially. At the very least, we gave you some good options for you to look into. Okay, so we've got some exciting videos coming up soon, so make sure you stay tuned. We've also got a new free budgeting template that we're going to be adding to our website, so make sure you do check that one out. As usual, make sure you show us some love down below with a like. Make sure you do subscribe, and if you haven't checked out any of our previous videos, make sure you do check them out next door, and we will be back. You know the vibes. Let's get it.